It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Luthers head women's soccer coach, Coach Hollie Gray. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in college women's soccer?
Yeah, I think the world of coaching is one that, at least just how I approached in things. I started playing and I played as a long time as a kid, like for as long as I could remember, and I'd always kind of been the loud vocal kid, and so you could say that coaching was kind of in my DNA and was about to happen. And so, I'd been an assistant for almost 6 years, and so the next jump naturally as an assistant is either to stay as an assistant, get out of coaching, or become a head coach. Um, and I knew getting out of coaching and staying an assistant weren't really the things that were calling to me, and so it became all right, head coach. Um, and then with that too is like I was pretty open, men, women for me, and how I approach the game is athletes are athletes, and so didn't really matter. And having being a Luther grad for me, like when the opportunity arose to throw my name in the ring for the head women's position here, something that I couldn't pass up on. And so, um, yeah, for me, it was kind of God's timing to kind of put me in the place to say, "Hey, you're ready for this," and um, yeah, kind of let go and let him take the reins, and here I am.
How was that experience like as a soccer player playing for Lutheran?
Yeah, I mean, as a player, so I transferred in my sophomore year to Luther, and so I spent my freshman year at an institution and I wasn't necessarily happy. I played a lot, but we weren't winning. And again, culturally, it wasn't a good fit for me. And so um, the number one thing I always had when I played was that sense of joy and that sense of pride. And so when I got to Luther, those two things were immediately reignited from the first day of practice, where I was with a group of guys who had just come off of a Sweet 16 run. And what was great for me too is like the guys who were my year, so the sophomore class, they accepted me as one of their own. So it wasn't even like I missed that first year. But also with that too, the freshmen that came in with me, and so we're all new on Luther's campus together. They also accepted me as one of their own, and so um, not only did I have a joy and a reignited passion for the game, a lot of it centered around hard work, and again, the results were there as well, but also a group of guys who were giving everything they could, not only for themselves, but more so for the the Norse head, as we like to call it. And so, for me, it was a great experience. Our atmosphere was unreal. Night games here are a special environment and special thing that um, again, I think is unmatched a lot of around the country. And as a player, that was super special. And so I had a great career. Some of my best friends or some of my teammates here, and um, obviously, I loved it so much that I came back. So yeah,
What was that feeling like getting to put on that soccer jersey for them and representing them?
yeah, it was that sense of there's a sense of like this is what I'd worked for. And again, as a kid, I always had that like mindset of like I'm gonna be a pro, I'm gonna be a pro, I'm gonna be a pro. And for me, playing for Luther and playing under the lights here in the Valley, as we like to call it, putting on that jersey and walking out and knowing that I had friends who were there cheering me on, I had teammates on the bench cheering me on, I had professors cheering me on. Um, it was a special feeling that I still get chills and goosebumps thinking about and certain memories. And again, for me, I was fortunate enough to have a coach who believed not only in myself, but also kind of believed in me more so than I believed in myself, which was really hard to do because I was a player who never lacked confidence. And so yeah, it was that special aspect of like everything just kind of culminated, and playing for Luther just made it special.
As a player, as you talked about it, what was that experience like playing in the Valley?
The Valley is a special, special place. Again, I think in all athletic realms, you and so we knew, and what's great about Luther and kind of our outdoor venue setup here is soccer is um, the only sport that has lights, the only outdoor venue at Luther that has lights, and so we're able to play a 7 o'clock, 7:30 kickoff on a Friday night. Um, which I don't know if you've been how recently you've been on a college campus, but 7:30 on a Friday night is typically a pretty raucous environment and atmosphere. And again, when you're on the good side of that, right, and people are cheering for you, you get that added boost to run a little bit harder, um, to run those 5 extra yards and everything like that. And so yeah, the home atmosphere here is one that's undeniable. It's, in my opinion, one of the best in all of sports. Again, I'm extremely biased in saying that, and I can admit that. But for me, we've had opponents, and even in my time here as a coach on the women's side, like we've had coaches who have jokingly said, like, "Hey, we're not going to come play you at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night," and I'm like, "Why not?" And they go, "Well, the atmosphere is like my team can't handle it. We have to play you Saturday at noon." To which I kind of joke and say, "Okay, that's not going to be that much better for you, but cool." Um, and so, yeah, again, our institution is one that the way we operate, everybody cares for each other. And I think when you're around people who care about you, especially as an athlete, whether your teammates, coaches, but also just other people on campus, it makes your venue and your atmosphere and your environment special. Um, and so, yeah, I think that answered that question. So,
After your playing time, what was it like getting into coaching and coaching on the club level?
yeah, I mean, I think for me, again, kind of, and I touched on it a little bit, like as an athlete and just how my brain has always worked, I knew I wanted to stay in sports. Um, and so kind of my senior year, I went through my early life, my quarter life crisis, as I'm going to call it here, where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life next. And so, fortunate enough for me, I got into psychology. I got my undergrad in psychology, and so I knew I loved psychology and I knew I loved sports. And so it was all right. How do I combine those two? Um, and so coaching kind of became the thing. And so graduation day came rolling around, and my head coach here at Luther came up to me. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing next year?" And I kind of blank stared him for a little bit, and I said, "Been meaning to talk to you about that. Like, I would love to get into coaching." Uh, and so, yeah, that spring we have got a local youth club here in town, and so I was like with them, and that really kind of scratched the itch to get into coaching. And so for me, it was that like I think I like this. I'm pretty good at it. I like connecting with people. I like soccer. I like understanding how to bring the best out of people. Um, and so, yeah, going into the club level, it was kind of a I had made some connections again from the clubs that I had played in, and for me, I was fortunate enough to reach out, and um, luckily, I was a good enough person that they gave me both here in town, and then my parents are down in Des Moines, so I went back and coached at a club down in Des Moines for a little bit. And yeah, they gave me the opportunity to get into coaching and interact and like wet my toes for lack of a better terms, and yeah, it was great, and here I am. So
How is that feeling like coming back to your alma mater and first becoming a grad assistant?
yeah, so I mean, coming back that first year for me, that first fall was exciting and nerve-wracking, um, and eye-opening all at the same time, right? As a 22-year-old recent graduate, like my best friend and roommate was still on the team because he was a rising senior, so I had just graduated. Um, but my other best friend was the assistant coach too, so I had my best friends on both sides of me. Um, and so yeah, that first year was super exciting to be on the opposite side of things. I had to, grow up a little bit, but I also think I was put in a pretty unique and valuable situation where, again, I was in coaching conversations and I was in deliberations and I was in practice planning. lineup planning all the jazz of coaching, but also my friends were there. And so I was able to deliver messages both ways, in a way that kind of, at least I think, resonated with both our head coach and my teammates at the same time of, hey, here's what we're seeing from the coaching side of things, and I'm going to tell you this in a different way, but it's the same thing. Um, and also like, hey, coach, like the guys are feeling heavy legged, but they are too afraid to tell you because they're still players, right? And so um, that first year was super great and super valuable. And again, I don't think if that first year wasn't as great as it was, I'm definitely not still in coaching. So yeah, and I got to do it at the place that I loved so much. So
What was that feeling like when you got announced to become the head women's soccer coach for your alma mater?
yeah, I think it was, that feeling was pretty similar to that first year being an assistant here too on the men's side when I got named the head women's coach. Um, a large sense of pride, and that's kind of how I still operate every day. Of is I care so much about Luther. I care so much about um, the soccer program and the women's program in specific. Some of my best friends, again, while I was a player, were on the women's team, and that jersey behind me is our 2016 national tournament team. And for me, like I was really good friends with a lot of them, and so having that jersey up in my office every day is that added um, pride, and motivator, and to give back. Not only to have success on the field, but to also give each of our athletes that same experience of you can come be great in the classroom as well as on the field. Um, and again, my pride there is I'm unabashedly biased, and so I tell every kid I sit down with, I'm like, hey, I'll be honest with you, but just so you also know, I'm extremely biased about how great Luther is. Um, and that for me is wise because I lived it, I experienced it, and I've been around some of the great things that have happened here. And yeah,
Of course, after getting announced as the next head coach, what was that feeling like stepping onto that women's soccer field for the first time?
yeah. So I mean that COVID. So I got hired COVID spring, right? And so again, the pandemic is happening. We're kind of coming out of it. We're kind of not. And so um, my first, I got hired March 14th was my first official day. Our first game was March 30th, right? So in the realm of coaching to say like, hey, you just got hired, and by the way, you have 16 days until your first game. Um, oh, and by the way, you can't see any of your players' faces to truly help learn your names, right? Because we were practicing in mass. And so yeah, that first stretch, that early day, the first practice, I remember sitting in with my assistant at the time, like, all right, we're gonna try and implement some things, but also just gonna go out and compete. Um, and what's so great is thinking back to it, and it was my running joke. So our senior class who just graduated, they were freshmen that March 30th game, and I always joke with them like I had this grand pregame speech, right, or first huddle of our first game, my first game in charge of it as a head coach. And keep in mind we had masks on, right, and so we warm up in masks, we'd come in for the huddle, and luckily we were able to play without masks on. And I remember our kids took off their masks, and everything I had planned to say left my mouth, and I'm like, oh, that's what you guys look like. Cool, go have fun. Um, and that for me is a moment that will always stick with me. Like that is coaching, right? You think you have this master plan, and then life hits you, and you're like, yeah, you know what? It's not. It's important, but it's not that important. And so, um, yeah, the first game was a whirlwind. That first spring was a whirlwind. Um, but it also was so exciting and so rewarding looking back at it too. So
For you as a head coach, what was that feeling like stepping onto that field for the first time as a head coach?
exciting, nervous. I kind of went through my imposter syndrome phase a little bit, right? Of like, am I ready? Am I sure I can do this? Am I sure I'm ready? Um, do I know what I think I know? And my message resonate the way I think it resonated? And how do I resonate things? And how do I get this across? And what adjustments am I going to make? Right? You go through it all, and the whole gambit of emotions. And then again, the whistle happened, and that competitor instinct like kicked in, and you just go like, all right, yeah, let's go back to basics of compete, play for each other, run for each other. And that's kind of our big personality thing. And our value too is just compete, right? At the end of the day, if you're competing, you're giving everything you can. Um, you can have peace of mind. And so, yeah, that imposter syndrome kind of faded away really quick once that opening whistle happened. But yeah, definitely going into that opening whistle, it's like, am I ready? Am I sure I'm the right one? Did I do this? Um, and again, I think any coach who tells you that they didn't have that in their opening game, I would say maybe they're denying it a little bit. But also you get refortified every time the whistle blows and every time you are around your team.
As a first-time head coach, what was that feeling like getting that first win as a head coach?
Oh man, I tell you what, it was so I actually lost my first 3 games that COVID spring. And so again, you talk about that like imposter syndrome. Yeah, getting that first win off the back is like, okay, yep, that's right. I actually it's good. We can do this. I know what I'm talking about. Our team is starting to buy in. We're successful. Um, and so yeah, the first win was like a monkey coming off the back, but also was extremely gratifying, but also gave you the like itch for more. Um, and so yeah, that's what it's been with me ever since that first win. Um, the first win, the first goal scored, the first shutout, all of those stick with me, and all those are kind of driving forces to this day about like, okay, let's keep going. What's next? And again, I'm a little bit of an addict in that way of like I want more. Um, I want to win again, and so we're a little bit over a month away from or a little bit under a month away from our opening game. And my message and my mentality and my energy levels are saying like, yes, I want to win. I want to get back to it. I want our team back together. We're going on to do great things. And for me, it all stems from that first win too. Of like, that's a great feeling. Let's have it again. So.
What does a typical game day look like for you as a head coach versus for your athletes?
Whew. I mean, our athletes, I think they're in class, right? And so again, we typically play Wednesday, Saturday. And so Wednesday they're taking classes in the morning. They typically have like a 2 to 3 hour break to kind of separate from class to our game. And so with that, class, they're eating and then they're just in game mode and they play the game, right? For me as a coach, I can't sit still, especially on home games. I am not a little stitious, I'm superstitious in the sense I have to listen to the same music every day. On game days, I have to do the same things. I kind of lock myself in my office, especially on home game days. I'm watching film, making sure that our team is prepared. And again, I can't sit still. So, like bouncing off the walls, like pacing back and forth in my office. And I think a large part of that is because I understand too, as a coach, like especially in soccer. Soccer's not a coach's game; it's a player's game. Um, and so again, as a coach, like you want this sense of control, but also I understand too that at the end of the day, come kickoff, like I can't really control anything, and um, I think that is why like I just kind of like pace around. And again, my office isn't that big, but there's music going. Um, my assistant like hesitates to knock on the door before kickoff, but we meet probably an hour before kickoff and I kind of give them the final coaching points, things I want to see, things that we need to be aware of. And then we go out and we start our warm up. And warm up for me is arguably the worst time because, again, I don't really do anything during a warm up. So I'm just like sitting there, I'm pacing back and forth. Uh, Again, just a ball of energy. And then kickoff comes and I'm up and active and um, helping the team as best I can from the sideline. Again, knowing that at the end of the day, it's up to our players. And so the only thing I can control is making sure they're prepared going into it. And I gave them all the information I could give them to be successful.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against each week?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the American Rivers Conference is one of the toughest conferences in the D3 level across all sports. And so our conference is extremely difficult. And our top 2 teams currently, right now, we're typically sending 2 teams, occasionally 3 teams to the national tournament. Um, and so with that, top team in the conference right now is Loris out of Dubuque. Simpson College is on a little run here too as well. So both of them got in the national tournament and won. Um, Simpson won their opening game. Loris lost in the Sweet 16. So we're chasing them down. But with that too, Wartburg down in Waverly, Iowa is a perennial powerhouse that we always have to be aware of. And again, it's no easy game there. University of Dubuque is another tough game for us. College in Cedar Rapids is another difficult one. but then we've got Buena Vista, Nebraska Wesleyan, Central. I believe that's everybody who, again, every week, every game in our conference, it's not a surprise. You don't get on and you go like, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to win this one today, right? You tell the team like you have to be prepared, you have to be ready, because yeah, if you come up, you show you're not prepared one day, next thing you know, you lose, and that messes everything up for the conference and conference success there. So.
What is that home game atmosphere like when you play teams like Dubuque versus going away and playing teams like Luther?
Yeah, I mean, playing teams at home again for me, like our atmosphere is it's great. And again, we're typically double headers in conference as well. So we've got our men either side of us where um if we play before them, they're out cheering us on, and then we on the reverse side of that, they play after us, we're watching and we're cheering them on as well. Again, both sides of our conference, every game is a battle. So um if you're coming to see a 6-7 nothing blowout in our conference, you're probably not coming to the right conference games because those don't happen in our conference. But our atmosphere again for me is great. We get that added boost at home. And what's also great too, and for me, yeah, our parents are phenomenal. Um, the rowdy sea of blue, as I like to call them, where at home they're loud and obnoxious and cheering our team on. One of our parents, his role, and it's actually like pretty awesome. At kickoff, he runs down our sideline, the opposite sideline of our bench with our Norse flag. And so again, I don't know how many schools have a parent who's doing that every game. So he does that at home, but also what's great is he does that on the road. And so, yeah, going away to Dubuque, going away to Loras, going away to Simpson, going away to Nebraska Wesleyan, right? Our parents are there. And what's great too, again, especially in conference, because we have double headers, our men's team typically travels as well. And so it's always great to know that at a minimum, you have 27 to 30 people cheering you on in a game that, aren't your parents, but also, again, the way our team and our parents operate. Our parents are at games that, again, I kind of look up. I'm like, why did you come to Lincoln, Nebraska on a Saturday in September when we're going to be in Decorah on the Wednesday, right? And they're like, well, I'll see you on Wednesday also. And so, yeah, for me, our parents are great in traveling. It's part of college sports. And again, I think our team and our program is supported in that way of like every game feels like there's support there, which is super important.
As a head coach, what is it like having that dual game where, let's say, the men play first and then the women play second?
Yeah, I mean, I think it adds to our team and our program and our student body atmosphere. That right, you get 2 games. What's great too is our programs are super close. I think what's beneficial for me especially is our men's coach was actually my coach, and so when we play second, it's great for me because I can kind of shift, like cut off my brain a little bit, right? And like instead of pacing around in my office waiting for kickoff, I'm pacing around our field, but also still watching and supporting our men's team and vice versa, right? So if we play early, knowing that our men's coach is behind us, um, cheering us on, and again in his stoic like support system way, behind every big win, we're always like that's always the first text I get is massive win, good job, keep going. But also, right, season ends, he's the second person. My wife is typically the first person who texts or call me. But our men's coach is right there, right? And so having that relationship is great. And I think that stems from the fact that we play on the same day and we have those double headers. And again, like our teams support each other. And what makes our program special.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you built for the women's soccer program?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's great is, and I'm the type of person, and we joke about it within our team, that I'm not a dictator, right? So our culture isn't what I say goes. But we also joke that we're not a democracy where everybody, has the equal say. I would say we're more of a monarchy a little bit, where like our players get to have some say, but when it comes down to things, like I'm the one who's making the decision. But with that too, like our culture is one where they support each other, they love each other. Uh, they're almost like inseparable sisters, which is like super funny. We've got dynamic duos in our team where on the surface you don't think that they would like duos would be the duos, but they are, right? You've got your introvert who's best friends with the extrovert. Um, so much so that like a couple of our first years and we finished this school year and I asked both of them like, all right, how long are you guys going to go without seeing each other? And they both looked at each other and laughed and said, yeah, we're dropping our stuff off and then we'll see each other on Tuesday. Right. So they left school on Saturday. They're seeing each other 3 days later. And that for me is our culture, right? They want to be around each other. They want to laugh with each other. Our team group chat right now is exploding as we're about to come back. Trash talking from like Euro supporting games. Every spring we do like competition spring, and so I've split them off into teams, and they come out and they're like decked out in their team colors. They're only talking to their teammate like their spring competition day teams and cheering each other on. And so we have that competition side, but also what's great too is they're the ones who they call whenever anything good or bad happens, right? And so it's not uncommon for me to ask, hey, have you heard so and so, like what's going on? Again, because I'm pretty in tune with our players, and our players look at me and say, don't worry about it. We've got it covered. We're there to support each other. In our end of the year banquets, there's always tears shed for stories that are like I have no idea about, but they're always like, I remember when you stayed up and talked to me until 6 in the morning. And that's like the most memorable time I had, right? And yeah, to be a part of that culture is pretty special. And for me, it's almost like staying out of the way and just making sure the ship keeps going straight. And so yeah, it's great.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes? And as a head coach, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Yeah. I'm gonna actually start with that second. The second portion is a little bit easier than that first portion, but again, it's not that easy. So what do I look for in an athlete, right? And I always tell like I don't spend a lot of time talking on like the technical, physical, and mental side of things, right? Because for me, if you talk to any coach in any sport, what do they want? They want good athletes who are like, all right, you have to be athletic enough to play for us, and you also have to be skilled enough, right? And so for me, like those things, especially in the soccer world, are givens, right? So I want players with a good first touch. I want players with a good soccer IQ. I want players who athletically can compete and handle things. So that's a given. Um, but what else do I look for, and what for me separates players and the players that really excite me, and that I do everything I can to get in our program. And we have players in our program who thrive, and I would say the players that do thrive. Um, their motors never turn off, right? And that's in all aspects of life. And so our top players, our players every practice, they're seeking to be the best. And again, sometimes I have to tell them like, hey, this is a recovery session. You don't have to be the best at stretching. They're like, no, I have to get the best stretch. I'm like, okay, sure. But that's just how they carry themselves. And so they do that in the classroom as well, which is super important. Of again, it's not uncommon for me to have players come in like, oh, I failed a test. And like, all right, what did you get? Like, what did you actually get? And they go, oh, I got an 89. I go, okay, that's a B plus. Like you didn't fail. They're like, no, I need an A. Like I want an A. And so that motor aspect of it's easier for me to turn somebody's motor off and turn it down than it is for me to turn it on and get it started. And so yeah, I look for players who have a huge motor. I also look for players who are coachable. And for me, we talk about coachability in our team being something that, yes, player to coach is something that's coachable, but player to player is almost more important. Again, going back to the game of soccer is a player sport. And so I can be telling a player something and they're more naturally going to do it. But how are you applying and listening to the information that your teammate on the field is giving you? I think is something that is super important to me in our program. And so you look for, again, soccer ability and everything like that, but also motor and coachability. And then the final thing I look for is personality. I had a coaching mentor, and it's something I strongly believe in. I want to coach players. I don't want to coach robots. Again, I don't have the like mental capacity to control 30 people at the same time. And so I want players to show their personality, right? If you're a goofball, be a goofball. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm a weirdo. And I'm not trying to be something I'm not. I'm okay with that. And so for me, showing that personality is something that's super important there. So that's kind of what we look for. um, in players. And then as the recruiting process goes, I always talk about like everybody's process is a little bit different, right? And so I have my own timeline that we operate off of in terms of when I want players to make their decision. Um, and my job is a coach as a recruiter is to say, I'm going to make it as difficult for you, Brandon, to tell me you're not coming to Luther as possible, but I'm not going to make the decision for you, right? And I think that's something that's super important. Um, and so I lay out our guidelines and our steps, but also with that, it's like, all right, how does that sound? How does that feel? And so again, the simple steps are right, getting to campus, checking things out, getting around our team, coming for a game day, slash overnight visit and doing those things. But outside of that, like when it happens and how it happens, I think is something that is different for each player, right? And so um, for our incoming 2025 class, we had um, one of our players came up for an overnight visit and it was like, yep, I love it. I'm coming here. I'm like, oh, like, okay, like slow your roll. She's like, no, I've been like, I don't need to see anything else. I've been around the team. I've seen how you coach. I see how you operate. I love the institution. I go, okay, cool. Um, but with that, like there are players who I'm still recruiting in actively in our 25 class who've been to campus 2, 3, 4 times, um, who've met with professors, who've been around our team, and that's okay too, right? They're just going through the process. And so yeah, again, for me, it's making sure that I'm doing my job of saying, hey, it's gonna be I want it to be as difficult as possible for you to tell me you're not coming here. But also at the end of the day, like if you choose to come to Luther, we're gonna love you. And if you choose to go to some other school, and I always say this too, like the number one thing I did, if you call me and say, hey, this is really hard to tell you, I go, you don't have to say anymore. I understand. But because I've done my job, right? It's the players who go, yeah, I'm not coming to Luther. I'm going here. That I go, okay, wasn't a good recruiter because I didn't make it as difficult as possible. Um, but each step is different. Each person is different.
What is it like as an alma mater and a head coach to get to see those players that step onto that soccer field for the first time?
It's exciting, right? And again, I always have those flashbacks to my time stepping on the field in the Luther jersey for the first time of um again, am I ready? I think I am. I believe myself, right? And so I tell all of our first years, especially in their first game, believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, believe in your teammates, and everything else will work out. Um, and so again, we have conversations after each game. At least I seek to have conversations with our first year, especially of like, all right, how'd you feel? Did you feel nervous? Did you feel excited? Whatever. And almost to a person, our players like, nope, I loved it. Or they're like, yeah, I loved it, but also like I didn't play well. And for me, it's removing like the not playing well aspect is something that again can always change and evolve, but I need to make sure that our players enjoy playing and love playing. And what's great is our seniors too are typically the ones that like will run over to a first year in their first minute in their first start and just like give them a high five. And I think that also calms the nerves, right? To say, okay, yeah, my seniors have my back. They love me. They trust me. Uh, and yeah, again, that goes back to our culture. Like my job is to just create the environment for people to thrive. Um, and our players, I think, add that key part too of like, yeah, you can thrive here and we value you. So, but no, as an alum, like anytime one of our first years gets their first opportunity to start or first college minutes or anything, first college goal, I think I celebrate those as much, if not more than they do. And I always joke like their parents might be the only people who celebrate more than I celebrate. And I think that's a great spot to be in.
What is it like getting to see those seniors put on that jersey for the last time representing the school?
Ooh, so you hit me with the joy and then you give me the sorrow. So thank you for that, Brandon. No, it's tough, right? And I think especially in the women's college game right now, again, it's growing, which is good, but also your last college soccer game is typically your last competitive soccer game. Um, and again, there are adult leagues and everything like that, but doesn't really quite, it's not really the same. And so again, when I celebrate our first years getting their first minutes, I mourn and I cry our seniors in their final minutes. Um, I'm one who leaves our seniors on the field to like play out the last seconds of their senior career versus subbing them off. Uh, we talk like they've done the work, they put in all the effort and the energy, and I think they deserve to go out on the field. And we always, again, I round them up in a big huddle. And like this past year, I was like they're crying, but I'm crying even harder of just like, and again, it's our senior class. I just graduated, right? Like they will always hold a special spot in my heart. Um, they were first years in my first ever college soccer game as a head coach. Um, and so I think that was also at part, but yeah, again, knowing that careers are over is never easy. But I'm also so appreciative and I thank them every time of like all the work that they've put in. Um, Listening to me over the course of 4 years, I think is, if my wife was here, she'll tell you it isn't an easy thing. And so them listening, but also applying and loving our team and our program is something that every senior, I can't thank them enough for. Um, so yeah, it's not easy to let them go.
As a coach, what is it like seeing those seniors go on and either play in the NWSL or professional soccer or getting into coaching afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any professionals so far. And again, I think the way women's soccer is growing in America, it's a hope, right? Obviously, is to say that you coach a professional. But more so, my goal and hope and dream is to say that I was a part of somebody's journey to doing what they want to do and they enjoy doing. Um, and so again, we've had one of our graduating fifth years is back kind of helping us. And so she's in the coaching realm. And so again, my job as a coach hasn't changed. It's to make sure that she enjoys doing what she's doing, while being a sounding board while she's going through any process, right? And so um, playing or coaching, again, I'm always there. So one of our players is now a high school coach and she texted me not too long ago, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? I go, it sounds like you've got the right idea. It sounds like you're going with the right approach. Make sure that your players know that you care about them and everything else will be fine. Um, but also that extends to, right, our players who go on, who are med school, right? And so we have two that are in med school starting this fall. So they just graduated in May and they're starting med school right now. And being a part of their like, which med school do I go to process, I think was just as and equally exciting. To say like, okay, what are the pros and cons? How are you feeling? Like, go where you feel loved and valued and wanted, where you also feel you can grow. Um, and that for me is you get the same joy of somebody going on and playing and coaching, and somebody going on and doing med school, and somebody going on and being an accountant, like going through all of that life is given. Uh, and to say like, yeah, I'll be a sounding board, but again, I and our players I think sometimes hate me for this because I don't tell them what to do. Um, and sometimes they do come to me like, tell me what to do. I go, that's not my job. My job is to support you and like, all right, what do you think about this? Like, how are you feeling? And okay, it sounds like you're feeling happy. So yeah, go be happy, go do that and go chase that. And so, yeah, supporting their process through everything is a real joy.
What are some of your future plans in the program moving forward?
To win, to keep winning, and then win some more. No, I think, yeah, every coach seeks to win, but also to do it in the right way. And so for me, I think, um, I never want to create an environment where winning is the only thing that's important, uh, but also being successful, right? And success comes in a number of ways. Um, so my plans, right, is obviously I want to hang up another jersey here. As much as I love that 2016 team and everybody who was on that team, I want to take that down, and put, the 2024, 25 team up, whatever it is. I want to replace that one. And so again, plans get to the national tournament, win the national tournament, um, conference championships, but also for me, we've had the team GPA, like team academic GPA award for the past 15 years, getting to 20, 25, 30 years, however long it is, and keeping that streak going is just as important, if not more important in my eyes. Um, and having our players love being with each other. I think we just had a Luther women's soccer wedding that happened this summer. Um, And to see all of those teammates come back together and celebrate one of their teammates is something, again, I'm not going to control our kids' futures. Um, but that's something that would bring me joy, right? As a coach, how do you not have joy of saying, yeah, a group of 18-year-olds came together and then 6, 7, 10, 12 years later, they're still together celebrating each other's successes and joys and journeys. Uh, and so, yeah, they're like, that's the plan there. Selfishly, our previous women's coach, who I actually have a really good relationship, who's one of my good coaching mentors and friends, he's at 99 career wins. So selfishly getting to 100 wins as soon as possible is also on the plans. But again, that's God's timing there. And um, yeah, for me, it's just about making sure our players have a good environment and a good atmosphere to achieve all that we're trying to achieve.
What advice would you give those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college women's soccer?
Come in fit. Um, Humble narcissism is something that we talk about a little bit here, right? Of uh, being humble and knowing that you don't know everything, but also believing in yourself. And so, again, come in fit and have that like self belief of like you're where you're at for a reason. Um, but also, again, if you're not fit, you're just putting yourself behind the eight ball. And again, you don't know what you don't know. And so, if somebody's telling you, like, hey, you should come in the fittest shape of your life, you should probably take that advice on board. But also back yourself, believe in yourself to make an impact. Again, you're where you're at for a reason. Um, and I think that's applicable across all levels, all conferences, all divisions. Anytime you're walking into a new environment, you have to believe in yourself because you're where you're at for a reason, but also put your best foot forward. And in the realm of sports, if you can't do anything else, make sure you're fit enough to do the physical portion of the game um, there. So yeah, come in fit and back yourself.
What advice would you give those college juniors out there that are transitioning to becoming seniors and leading the program?
Give, right? I think, and we talk about this too, like oftentimes as you graduate and elevate and mature throughout programs, you start to think like, oh, this is my turn, it's my thing, it's for me. Um, when in reality it's not for you, it's for others. And so give unto yourself, right? Give to the program, give to the first years, um, give to the sophomores to say like, yeah, it's not about you, right? And put yourself in their shoes, especially that first year, to say like, oh, I did, like when I was a first year, I wanted an upperclassman to put their arm around me and say like, hey, I see you doing good job, like doing good stuff. Why as a senior then, if that's what you wanted as a first year, why would you not then do that? um oh, as a first year, I wish like a senior would have picked things up for us and not like just yell at me to pick everything up. Okay, why then as a senior are you returning the favor, right? And so yeah, give to yourself, but also like enjoy it. I think that's the other piece too. As you get older, you appreciate things more, but you also have this like weighted pressure of like, oh, it has to be right because it's almost running out of time. Like, no, it has to be right because you enjoy it. Again, you like joy is a common theme of like if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then it's not worth doing, in my opinion. Um, and so yeah, give to the program because it's not for you, it's for the program. Um, and good things typically follow.
What advice would you give those seniors out there looking to play professional soccer, whether it's the NWSL or the U.S. women's route?
Um, I mean, I think the number one thing is again, it kind of goes back to that like first year vibe of make sure you're fit. Um, and don't stop going, I think is the number one thing too. Again, there's so many opportunities that are popping up. Um, again, whether it's getting into the national team pools and those things happen later in life. Um, but you've got the UPSL, you've got the WUPSL, you've got the NWSL. Um, you've got so many leagues and teams popping up and doing some things where if you want to play and you want to crack it and you want to continue playing on, it's there. Um, Now, is it going to be pretty and is it going to be glamorous? Are you going to, sign the contract that you think you're going to sign? No. Um, but also stay at it, right? Nothing worth having comes easy. And so, yeah, again, if you want to keep playing, keep playing. I think lean on coaches. I think is another big one too, where again, the coaching community is so small. Again, the Sioux Falls City FC flag there behind me, that came about. One of our players went and played for him in the summer because one of the coaches that I coached with was their sporting director. And my player came in and was like, hey, I want to play over the summer. And so whatever I do, I immediately reached out. Right. And I think that you hear stories about that all the time. And so, yeah, you ask and again, just back yourself too. So
What advice would you give those players looking to get into coaching after their playing career like you have?
I would say get into it, but also make sure that you want to do it, right? And I think Wet Your Feet is a good one for me. And I remember watching a Netflix documentary, Last Chance U, the basketball edition, and I think this exact same question, like one of the players was sitting down with the coach, I think his name is John Mosley, in a moment, and he's like, yeah, I want to get into coaching. I think I want to get into coaching. And Coach Mosley looked at him straight in the face and said, if you don't love it, don't do it, right? And I think that's what coaching is, because you pour so much out of you. Just again, we talk about giving, right? You give so much to your team. You give your time, your energy, your thoughts. And so, yeah, if you think you want to get into coaching, I think try it. But also like know that it is more than just the X's and O's. Know that it's more than just the recruiting. Know that it's so much more. And again, if you can try it out with like a U8 team, great. Again, I like our players, they always laugh. We've got, like I said, we've got the local youth club in town. And so every spring they go out and coach with them. And our players who's like, I think I want to get into coaching, they typically end up with the younger ones and they come back halfway through the spring, like, yeah, I'm not like, I can't do the coaching thing. Like, I can't do it. I go, yeah, I get it. I totally understand. Meanwhile, I love coaching the U8s in our local youth club because they're 8 years old. They're just about having a good time. They're just running around. And our players who truly want to get into coaching or getting their coaching licenses and everything like that, they start with those U8s. They're like, I love it. I want the U8s. I want the U14s. I want to do this. I want to do that. And so, yeah, number one piece of advice would be get into it, try it sooner rather than later. But also know that you have to love it once you're in it. So, yeah, coaching isn't about the money. It's about pouring into other people.
What advice would you give those coaches looking to coach at their alma mater like you have?
I mean, if it's available, I think it comes with a added sense of pride, but it also with that too, an added sense of pressure. At least that's how I approach things, right? Again, because I care about this place so much, I have that added pressure of like, all right, I'm not like, I don't want to be the one to mess it up. And so, yeah, if it's available to do it, I think do it. And yeah, again, you have that familiarity a little bit to say like, all right, I know how the school operates. I know how people operate. I know the kids that are successful here. And then, yeah, just run with it. So I think if it's open and available, run, try it, do it. I would say though, and people have asked me too, like, hey, would you ever, take, again, our men's coach was my coach here. And like, would you ever, if he leaves, would you ever try and get his? I'm like, not a chance. And again, that's because I just operate off of, I don't want to be the one after, like, I don't want to be the one directly after. I want to be the one after the one after the one. But even then, like, I love my job currently. I love my team. I love what I do. So my thought process isn't even about what's next or switching or anything like that. So, yeah.
What advice would you give those future head coaches out there looking to start up their own women's soccer program?
I mean, I think if you're seeking to start a program, I think that is a difficult. Again, everything in life is difficult. If it's not hard, if it's not difficult, then why are you doing it? Is a little bit of my approach. But it also like culminates and adds in everything too that I've kind of talked about. Like, make sure you enjoy it. Make sure you're willing to put it in. You gotta have pride and pressure. I think those things are going to be there. But I also think that's what will give you the energy to get out of bed in the morning to say, like, okay, I'm starting this. This is my baby. This is my child. This is what I want to do. I want to have success here. Like, I have to go find a way. And so, yeah, starting a program is no easy feat, but also it's so rewarding. And again, I think that's coaching in general, right? Of like, coaching is not easy, but it is so rewarding and so fulfilling. And you talk to any coach, it's not about like the win. I shouldn't say it's not about the wins and losses, but at the end of the day, we lay our head down, not about the wins and losses we had 3, 5, 8 years ago. It's about the successes of our kids, of the people that we've impacted. So if you're starting a program, make sure you love it. Make sure you're willing to put in the work. Make sure you're ready for some pressure. Make sure you're ready for everything that comes with it. And best of luck to you.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the program app?
Oh, you are. Let me pull those up because I don't know those off the top of my head. Personally, my personal Twitter is Hollie Gray 07 _. Our team Twitter or X account, I should say now, is capital L, capital C, women's soccer, and there's 2 S's in there. And then our team Instagram account is LC women's soccer, 2 S's there as well. So my personal Instagram, I'm going to kind of leave that one out just because that one, I don't really use it. But yeah, those are where we're at on social medias. Again, our team Instagram account especially gives a great insight too into our program of, again, the joy that we have, the laughs that come with everything. So yeah.
Thank you again, Coach Hollie Gray, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Lutheran as the head women's soccer coach.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brand, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Hollie Gray, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.